Hello and welcome to another video. So we did recently do a PortalCraft video, but this one is of course a bit different. This is probably one of the more popular variants that are going around right now, and that is the Maisha Omen Portal deck. This is a reasonable variation of that deck. I have seen ones running Puppet Room and Junk, but this one is just slightly different. I mean, Junk and that could easily probably be slotted into this deck in replace for stuff like Resistance and Parculus, but I mean, each to their own. There are just so many different possible variants these days that you can really slot in any of the lower card slots to kind of make up wherever you kind of want. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. The first couple of games we've got are up against Forest, and then we will have one, I believe, against Dragon or Rune. I can't remember exactly which one I was up against for the final match, but these first couple of matches are quite okay. They're very mid-range-ish as far as they go, where typically Maisha and things aren't as useful. You really want to be taking more advantage of stuff like Omen Destruction in the mid-game compared to, of course, your late-game finishes. We do start off pretty well though. Goblin is an ideal card when going into the Forest matchup, especially if you can get it off first, as of course it does deal with fairies very easily. Unfortunately though, they had the perfect counter to it, which worked out alright because we can go into our Flower Doll play, which gives us some decent potential setup. And now we actually get a chance to remove these, which is pretty reasonable. So I do decide to proc the Flower Doll, since it's going to have the least stats, and the extra draw will definitely help out. And because of order of operations, last word will actually take effect before the draw, so you do end up getting the Flower Doll back. It checks that before it does, of course, the double draw, then resolves. It's a different or weird way to do it. Personally, it would make more sense if the last word triggered, went into your hand, then you drew cards, but that's just how the order of operations for Shadowverse works. So now we've got a very nice setup. Omen is already raring to go. We've got our substitutions, which are great help in this deck against Forest. And we've also got, of course, the Flower Doll and the Maisha as potential setup. So, Peerless Shot. Since they only had 4 cards, they couldn't target the 3/5. So it worked in our favour for them to definitely trade off. And now we can just throw the Green Gunsmith to the board with zero issue. Since of course it does absorb a reasonable amount of damage at the same time as being just a really solid card. Now if I had have played this turn better, I probably could have got out something else. Traded that instead, but this was actually still pretty reasonable. I mean, we did a nice job, or maybe it was another game I'm thinking of. There was one game I made a major misplay, but sometimes that happens. So I don't see a great way to deal with this other than just going for the substitution play. I did want to trade off as much as I could before going for the substitution play. Being able to get, of course, Destruction down to 8. Even lower actually once you count this puppet that I'm sacrificing, will allow me to play it and play potentially another card alongside it. Maybe it was here that I made the error. Yeah, I think it was here. So trading this off works out. Then I went for the Hamlin play, which unfortunately might work. No, maybe it wasn't this one. I'm sorry, I'm just completely blanking. There was one that I made a really big mistake by trading and duplicating the wrong cards at the wrong moment. But it looks like this one was perfectly fine to go for Destruction in black, while also wiping the board, making it very hard to remove all this. Because even if they did remove this, they would still have to deal with the potential Maisha, and that would be a terrible thing to be forced to deal with. And they are going to... Even though they are going for 12 damage, which is absolutely insane, plus the double Greenland. And I'm trying to think, if I had have made the right play there, could I have went for lethal? And I don't think I could have. The Maisha just wouldn't be active, so it's not usable, unfortunately. So all I could do was buy my time with some healing, which happened to work out just fine to win us the game. So definitely getting those early Omen plays is extremely important in the forest matchup typically. You don't really want to get dragged out too much because you'll see turns like that where they'll just swarm the board with massive storm damage and Greenland damage and really cripple you. I mean, I took 16 damage in that turn and only just barely recovered, probably thanks to the extra healing that I'd managed to get, but honestly, there's not many ways to counter this outside of just hoping that they don't end up with an ideal hand. That's why I don't like playing against forest much. Goblin, not bad. I would like to give this forest deck a go though. I'm pretty partial to aggressive at forest decks, so it would be a lot of fun to play. Fortunately, just don't have the cards. So right now we're just going to sacrifice whatever we can. This game looks like we're going to play a lot more of the long game as far as our hand goes. And this is probably the worst target to have to trade against, but don't really have a choice. I want Sniper to get its full effect as quickly as possible, even if it requires me taking the damage on that follower. So, a water fairy and another fairy, okay. And there is the Lily. Not very nice buffs. Now, I could have wiped this whole board, but I did decide to favour the destruction for extra draw. I could have easily went for Joy of Destruction and just wiped it. But I think I'm okay with leaving up a single follower, especially when they do have to deal with my own board first. Peerless Shot would be the only real dangerous card, and Arborist really isn't a problem. But they might do a nice job at dealing with this. So there is a fair trade, a little bit of damage to face. And now we can go for our destruction play. Honestly, I think that worked out pretty good. Pretty reasonable. We can go for a strike form golem. At this point, all we have is Omen of Craving as our setup play, since we don't have Maisha and we didn't have Omen of Destruction, but I think we did a fairly good job at securing that. So the final game is against Rune. Big shock. I mean, Rune still isn't super popular at the moment, but definitely I've seen a couple more since we did the last video. So Hamlin, Sniper, and Green. That's actually really good. Ham, Sniper, Green. That's all I got to say for that. I mean, Hamlin on 2, duplicate 3-drop. Silver gives me the 3-drop with Rush, takes out a weak follower. And even better, a 1-drop line play. Pretty perfect. And then we're also going to go turn 4 into Omen. Plus taking the healing, because in these sort of situations, I'd much rather play it safe than sorry. Sometimes the extra damage works out, sometimes it doesn't. So we can't do much against this, but next turn should be a lot better. The only problem now is they are spamming a lot of cards, which puts us in a very difficult position. I really hadn't seen much Mysteria Rune until probably the last day and a half maybe. I've definitely seen more. Not quite as many, but definitely more. There's the Magic Missile and of course, Mysterian Missile. They've got such good board clears. If they hadn't have cleared those, I would have had a much better destruction play this turn. Being able to, of course, decrease the cost on destruction in white. Class President Hannah. Okay, Hannah, what are you going to do for us? We can go for our Kami play. We're probably not going to be aiming to use Maisha in this match. I mean, if we let them get to turn 10 going first, the odds of us losing, of course, goes up an astronomical amount. So being able to use our Evos a bit more sparingly might be nice. And of course, they're going to get the clear on this. It is going to cost them their whole turn. And it does make our Destruction White not quite playable. But that's fine when we can go for our pretty wide board play and decent protection from just straight up destruction effects. Now we're in for some trouble, Light Mage. If they had have gone for a ward, we would have been in some really, really bad trouble. Fortunately, don't believe that's what they go for here. Nope, they go for the Magic Mentor play. which for us is just straight up better. So a trade-off, that does let us, again, trade, that's the idea. And we can take advantage of the destruction in white to lower black, especially once we play the flower doll, making it playable next turn and getting us basically victory. So Mysterian Circle, actually I think it was this match that I may have made a bit of a mistake on. Ideally, I should have just went for the destruction in black. Instead, I decided to play Flower Doll, which meant that I wasn't able to use black at all this turn, and that put us at a pretty big disadvantage. It was such a minor move that I can't believe I actually made that mistake. If I had have just played the destruction in black, it would have just ended the game next turn and it wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't have been at risk from the potential and sorcery next turn, which would only take them playing an and this turn or turn 10. Which is, of course, the only thing I was worried about. Fortunately for us, it doesn't look like they have one, or if they do, they were trying to get it to 0. And we can at least heal ourselves up a bit. But still, a massive risk that I took there. For absolutely no reason. I should have just stuck with my gut, played black, played nothing else, and passed my turn. Fortunately, they obviously didn't have lethal, which worked in our favour. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. There are so many portal decks floating around at the moment that I'm not really sure what to cover. I've just been trying to cover whatever portal decks seemed interesting enough and try and get as much variation out of them as I can before we start going into full-on refinement mode and finding what exact cards are pretty much perfect for the current meta. But I feel like it's very similar to how Mysteria was last month before-ish, where it was pretty much down to what you wanted to run in the deck, and there was a few different variations on the Mysteria archetype, whereas now there's maybe 1 or 2 variations that have been cut right down. So I expect that Portal will find a very similar rhythm where people will either go straight up Artifact, straight up Portal, or have somewhere in between and find a very reliable list that won't need much variation to it. So if you guys did enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, see ya.